Welcome, listener, in the shadows. We bring stories into the light. Join me as we explore the encounters no one speaks of and the things that watch from the dark. If you're still here after all that, you already know the kind of stories we tell. The kind that crawl under your skin, that echo in the quiet when the episode ends. If you want to carry a piece of that darkness with you, wear what haunts you. Our exclusive line of merch is made for listeners who feel more at home in the uncanny, the unspoken, the things that don't make sense in the daylight. Shirts, hoodies, and other gear, designed with that same atmosphere of dread, mystery, and whispered wrongness. Candles support the channel, feed the stories. You can grab yours at https://theshadows printify me, and as always, don't look behind you. The Thing That Watches the Road, Chapter 1. Mile markers and quiet things. Isaiah Duran didn't believe in monsters. Not really. He believed in exhaustion, in hallucinations brought on by long stretches of highway and too little sleep. He believed in caffeine pills and the slurring blue of interstate signs at 3 o'clock a.m., and how loneliness could twist a man's shadow into something unrecognizable. But superstition, skinwalkers, dogmen crouched in the hills, watching 18-wheelers roll past from behind ancient scrub and mesquite. Those were stories for old-timers with too much whiskey in their breath and bone-deep desert silence in their heads. Stories meant to scare rookies away from night routes through the Four Corners. Still, Isaiah kept the windows rolled up when he crossed the Navajo Nation. It was nearing dusk when he passed Shiprock, the sacred monolith rising from the earth like the petrified heart of some god too old to name. He'd seen it a dozen times, but tonight it pressed on his chest in a way he couldn't explain. Heavy, watching. A long breath fogged the cab's front window. Heat shimmered off the dashboard, and his phone buzzed from where it sat in the cup holder. "You going live tonight?" asked a text from Sawyer, a fellow trucker who followed his YouTube channel. Isaiah hesitated, thumb hovering. His channel was small but growing. He posted vlogs from the road, strange roadside diners, long-haul survival tips, and the occasional weird shit at 2 a.m. entry, where he ranted about seeing things that didn't make sense in the high desert, a billboard that changed messages between one blink and the next, a glowing animal eye too high up a tree, a voice saying his name over the CB radio when no one was on the other end. Tonight, he was planning something different. There was a story that'd been passed around a few of the trucker boards and Reddit threads lately. Whispers, always anonymous, about a figure, a tall one, who appeared at mile marker 203 along a stretch of I-491 known to locals as the Old Watchers Road. They said he had the face of a dog, but not a dog like you'd find wagging its tail at a truck stop. A canine face too long, too thin, too human in the eyes. A face that just stared from the ridge above the road and didn't move, not even to blink. Sometimes he was there for just a second, sometimes for an hour. People who saw him didn't sleep right afterward. Some went missing altogether. Others kept driving and drove right past their exits, their towns, their own homes, like they'd been pulled along a road that didn't end. Isaiah wanted to see for himself. The idea had been bouncing around his head for a week. Make it a live stream, get the view count, invite the audience in, make it real. He texted Sawyer back, "Yeah, midnight, mile 203. He didn't need to say more. Everyone on the forums would know exactly what that meant. Chapter 2, the long descent to mile 203, the sun died slow over the high desert. Not a blaze, not a sudden dark, just a long bleeding out of light, until even Shiprock faded into a blacker outline against bruised sky. Isaiah drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting near the camera mount affixed to his dashboard. The phone's screen glowed softly, livestream prepped, chat disabled until he hit the marker. That was the promise. No content until 203. He liked the silence though, the stillness of it, the world without traffic or notification tones. This stretch of highway, deep inside Diné, was always unnervingly quiet. No gas stations, no roadside motels, just land. He flicked the headlights to high beam. Even they felt swallowed. At 11:17 p.m., the first sign appeared. Faded green, rust along the bottom, bullet popped from decades of local teenagers. Mile 195, 8 miles. His jaw tensed. He knew the road's rhythm. He'd driven it 3 times a month for the last 2 years, hauling HVAC units from Durango down to Gallup. But tonight, the mile markers felt uneven, stretched, too long between them, like the road itself was uncoiling differently. 7 miles later, the radio hissed, just static at first, then under it, a voice. Isaiah! He froze. The CB was off. He hadn't used it since Flagstaff. He turned the knob, full volume, nothing, just white noise. Don't be cute, he muttered. Not tonight. He clicked the radio off, then on again. The voice was gone. He glanced up at the hills. The landscape was jagged here, full of broken stone and sandstone towers. Perfect cover for something or someone to crouch in shadow. Mile 199, his breath caught. That wasn't 4 miles, maybe 2. He eased his foot off the gas. Outside, the landscape began to flatten. The high ridges gave way to open scrubland and long black silhouettes of twisted trees that didn't belong this deep into the desert. The dashboard buzzed again. His phone now displayed a prompt, live stream active. Viewers were already trickling in. He reached for the mic. What's up, night owls? You know where we're going. The chat flooded instantly. Mile 203, Dogface Man Time. Bet it's a hoax. Dude, this is gonna curse you. Do it for the views. Isaiah gave a half smile, but his jaw clenched tighter. He didn't like how fast the road was vanishing behind him, not how it looked, how it felt. Like memory was dissolving mile by mile. Then the headlights caught something, not a figure, not yet. But the hills ahead looked wrong, too symmetrical, as if the earth itself had made shoulders, sloped and hunched like something preparing to stand. The camera lens flickered. In the feed's bottom corner, the chat erupted in all caps. Someone's there. Right side, rewind. Pause at 202. You missed IT. Isaiah stared ahead. Mile 202. The next curve was shallow, lined with mesquite and coyote brush. The roadside sloped steep, lined with red dust and old rock. He slowed. There, a rise just 20 feet from the highway's shoulder. And atop it, something tall, something not moving. It had the outline of a man, but too long in the arms. The way it stood was wrong, like it wasn't standing at all, just frozen in mid-step and forgot how to unfreeze. He pulled over. The lights stayed on, engine idling. Camera pointed toward the ridge. He zoomed in. The figure didn't flinch. Dog-shaped face, too narrow in the snout. Long ears like torn leather, half folded. Its eyes caught the headlight glow and didn't blink, not once. Isaiah reached for the door handle and paused. The chat exploded again. Do not get out. Stay in the truck. Brother, don't, but he wasn't reading anymore. He was staring, because the thing, the watcher, had started to smile. Not like a dog, not like a man, like something that knew you were watching it back. Chapter 3. The hill beyond mile marker 219. There was a stillness to the desert that could unsettle even the most seasoned driver. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that felt curated, as though something had removed all sound, all movement, and left only a stage, waiting for its performer. Cole had never noticed the hill before. It wasn't tall, a long, squat thing that rolled up just past the bend at mile marker 219, but it had presence. There were no trees on it, just pale rock and scrub, and yet he'd felt it watching him every time he passed. He didn't remember the first time it struck him, only that for the last few weeks, his eyes had been drawn to it like a magnet. There was something waiting there. That night, the hill appeared again, washed in moonlight, the desert floor silver and dead quiet. Cole had the road to himself, nothing but the low hum of tires on asphalt and the occasional whisper of wind. He slowed the rig just slightly. Not enough to arouse suspicion from his dispatcher, just enough to look. That's when he saw it, not in motion, not skittering across the road or darting between cactus. No, it stood still, stock still, on the crest of the hill just above the range of his headlights. A figure. He could make out the legs first, long, unnaturally thin. The posture, wrong, upright but bowed somehow, like a person trying to mimic standing but not used to it. Its arms hung at its sides, unmoving, and the head, dog-shaped, Cole's gut wrenched. A snout. Long, angular, not like a friendly lab or collie, more like a coyote caught mid-starve, but bigger, and it was staring at him. Cole sped up without thinking, swallowing a curse. His hands trembled on the wheel. He watched the hill disappear behind him in the rearview, a smear of darkness with that thing still rooted atop it like a statue. The memory clung to him, parasitic, burrowing in behind the eyes. A dog face, a human stance, unmoving yet coiled, like it could sprint the full distance to the highway in seconds if it wanted to. He didn't sleep well at the next rest stop. Cole parked at an old Love's off I-40, miles ahead, tucked between burned-out neon and broken vending machines. He pulled the blackout curtains closed, but the hill stayed with him, a quiet ghost behind his eyelids. And later, when the truck shifted on its shocks as if someone had leaned against it, Cole pretended not to notice. He told himself it was the wind, a shift in air pressure, suspension settling. But his hand drifted toward the crowbar behind the driver's seat anyway, resting there until sleep finally dragged him under. The next morning, his windshield had 4 faint smears on the outside glass, like finger marks, but too long, and there was a tuft of hair snagged in the grill of his truck, matted, grey, brittle as straw. He didn't remember hitting anything. He didn't remember stopping. But something had touched the rig, and in the soft morning haze, Cole couldn't help but glance down the highway again toward the horizon. Mile marker 219 waited, so did the hill, and the thing that watched from it. Chapter 4, Don't Say Its Name. The old ones say it watches because it remembers, not because it forgets. Cole didn't mention the figure to anyone for the next 3 days. Not to the dispatcher in Phoenix, not to the guy at the truck wash near Tucumcari who noticed him staring at the sky instead of answering questions. Not even to the little CB crowd he still tuned into at night for companionship. It wasn't fear that kept him silent. Not exactly. It was something deeper, older. A cold certainty in his gut that saying it out loud would lend it weight. Give it roots. Invite it. But it stayed with him anyway. Every stretch of barren desert, every scrub-covered ridge in the distance looked like that hill now. It was as if his mind had slipped its tether and was now reformatting the world in the shape of that silhouette. The figure never moved in his memory. That's what haunted him the most. Not its presence, but its restraint. Whatever it was, it had seen him, and it had chosen not to act. 3 nights later, he parked at a quiet Navajo-owned truck stop just outside Gallup. The air had the dry bite of winter creeping in, though the sun still scorched the land during the day. Inside, it smelled of fry bread, hot oil, and incense. Worn rugs lined the floor. There were no cameras, no piped-in music, no garish lottery ads, just silence and the heavy scent of desert earth trapped indoors. He didn't know why he asked. Maybe he just needed someone to tell him he was crazy. The woman at the register was maybe in her 60s. Long grey braids, turquoise rings on every finger. She looked like she'd seen enough life to call bullshit when she saw it. "I saw something," he muttered as he handed her cash for coffee. "Couple nights ago, standing on a ridge." She didn't answer, but she didn't hand him his change either. Tall, maybe 7 feet, thin, real still, like a person in a dog mask, but it wasn't a mask. He hesitated. "I think it was waiting." Still, she said nothing. But her eyes didn't leave his. Then slowly, she slid his change across the counter and took a step back. "I shouldn't have said anything," Cole said, attempting a chuckle. "You shouldn't have," she said. Cole blinked. "You saw it by the road." He nodded, unsure now if he wanted the conversation to go further. "Did you speak to it?" "No." "Did it speak to you?" "No." His throat tightened. "I just looked at it." "Don't do that again," she said. "Not unless you want it to remember your face." Cole frowned. "What is it?" Her lips pressed into a line. "Nothing I should name." "Come on," he said, more sharply than intended. "I'm not from around here, but I'm not stupid either. People out here believe in things you don't joke about. I'm not joking. That's why I'm telling you not to say its name." "You mean a skinwalker?" The woman recoiled, subtly, but the effect was immediate. She glanced toward the door. Her hands made a small motion beneath the counter, like a warding gesture. "You don't say that word here," she said. Her voice was cold now. "Not unless you want it to know you're looking for it." Cole raised both palms. "All right, I'm sorry." She stared at him for a long moment, then spoke again, quieter this time. "We've always known there's something on the roads, long before any trucks ever came through. Something that moves with the wind but leaves no scent, walks like a man but isn't, looks like a dog but smarter." Cole swallowed hard. "Some of our people believe it's the spirit of a man who was cursed. Others say it's older, something from before we had words to name it. It watches, waits, and if you see it too many times," she leaned forward, "it means it's letting you." Cole didn't sleep that night. He sat in his cab with the engine off, lights dimmed, staring out across the flatland like he expected the thing to just stroll into view. He replayed the moment over and over. The hill, the figure, its posture, not hiding, not hunting, waiting. The next morning he awoke to find dirt smeared across his driver's side mirror. A single line, like a finger, dragged across the surface, and two short grey hairs stuck in the frame of the window. He hadn't left the truck all night. He hadn't seen or heard a damn thing, but it had come back. And now he realized something chilling. The first time he saw it, he had been watching it. The second time, it had gotten closer. And now it had touched the rig. 3 steps, 3 nights. Cole didn't know how many steps came next, but it sure as hell wasn't done with him yet. Chapter 5. The plateau between worlds. The next morning, Mitch pulled off onto a wide gravel lot somewhere outside Chinnell, where an old gas station had been shuttered and left to the red dust. One of the tall metal awnings had collapsed, ribs of the structure peeled like a dead animal's ribcage, jutting at awkward angles into the morning sky. It had the look of a forgotten place, one that had not merely been abandoned, but purposefully erased. He stepped out to stretch, boots crunching over broken glass and packed dirt, and took in the vast quiet. The desert beyond the station was a bruise-colored blur of mesas and sky. The road curved away behind a hill to the north and vanished. It was the kind of place where silence gathered, made thicker by absence, of people, of sound, of safe memory. Mitch had slept maybe 2 hours. The rest of the night had been haunted by recurring images. The thing crouched on the embankment, its dog-like face angled toward the cab, unmoving. Watching. It hadn't followed him. It hadn't chased him. It hadn't done anything, and somehow that was worse. He pulled out his phone and opened the recording from the night before. The video was grainy. His dashcam caught the faint silhouette near the hill at the 2:14:39 timestamp. There it was, that same upright shape, too tall, too thin. No detail in the face, only a rough blur of features. The comments on the clip had already begun to flood in. "Yo, that's not a person. That's not even a coyote. WTF is that shape? You're not supposed to look at them. Don't you know what that is? Diné, talk about these. Skinwalkers, dogmen, whatever you saw, don't film it again. You're not supposed to say its name." The name. Mitch paused on that last comment. That strange taboo echoed something an old Navajo elder had once told him during a delivery near Shiprock. "Don't say the word," the man had warned, without looking up from his cane. "You name a thing, you bring it near. You see it, you forget it. You hear it, you bury it. But don't speak the word, not in the dark." At the time, Mitch had brushed it off as just local superstition. Now it felt like a warning written across the sky in ash. He glanced back toward the hill. Nothing. Still nothing, but the world felt just slightly off, as if the horizon had leaned forward an inch too far, as if something was listening. That afternoon, he hit the road again. The landscape passed in stretches of golden desolation, rock bluffs rising like fossilized monuments, and the occasional rusted sign, half swallowed by tumbleweeds. Every now and then, he would catch himself checking the rearview mirror. There was nothing there, not really, just his own reflection, and a growing sense that his shadow wasn't entirely his anymore. Around dusk, as orange light poured across the landscape like blood through old cloth, Mitch found another strange roadside marker, a line of stones deliberately placed along the edge of the road. Perfectly round, each about the size of a fist, with concentric black rings burned into their center. 12 in total. He pulled over. These weren't natural. They were spaced exactly 5 feet apart, running perpendicular from the road into the sagebrush, like a line drawn by invisible hands. He stepped out and crouched beside one. The stone was smooth and warm to the touch. The burn mark in the center looked almost like an eye. He glanced up and froze. A dog was standing at the top of a ridge maybe 100 feet away, silhouetted against the dying sun. It wasn't moving, wasn't panting. Its legs looked too long, back too arched, almost human-shaped in the torso. The longer Mitch stared, the less he was sure it had a snout at all. He whispered, "What the hell?" It turned, not walked, turned and disappeared behind the ridge. Mitch backed toward the truck. Gravel shifted under his boots like whispers. The stones on the roadside suddenly felt like a boundary line he hadn't meant to cross. A ward or a warning. He climbed into the cab and slammed the door shut. From inside, the world looked distorted, as if the windows warped the landscape, blurred the distant hills. The camera was still recording, and this time he didn't check the footage. Chapter 6. The ash-eyed woman Mitch didn't sleep that night. He didn't even try. He kept driving west until the sky dulled from blood orange to bruised indigo, and when he finally stopped at a small trucker rest pullout near Red Mesa, the headlights barely cut through the rising wind. The desert had shifted again. The wide-open feeling was gone. Now it felt claustrophobic, like the landscape was folding in on itself, dragging him further into something it remembered better than he did. He sat with the engine off, listening. Nothing, no birds, no cars, not even the sound of the wind anymore, though the brush was swaying like it should have howled. He reached for the thermos on the passenger seat, but his fingers froze just inches from it. It was a woman's voice. Not inside the cab, not quite outside it either. More like it was close, pressed against the windows, between the air and the glass. A whisper that burrowed instead of echoed. "You drove too far." The voice didn't belong, not to a person, not even to the thing in the hills. It was something else, flat, old, and disturbingly gentle. He jerked the door open, stumbled out into the dust, and scanned the scrubby landscape with his flashlight. The beam cut through the dark in small slices, bouncing off desert willow and cracked sandstone. Nothing. And then he saw her. She was sitting on the concrete picnic table 20 feet from his truck, hands folded in her lap, wrapped in a worn green shawl that looked like it had been woven in another century. Her hair was gray and long and perfectly still in the wind. Her eyes were the color of cool ash, wide and unreadable. She smiled faintly, without warmth. Mitch didn't speak. Every part of him was screaming to get back in the truck. But something in her face, some old, calcified sorrow, pinned him there. "You saw it," she said. It wasn't a question. "On the road," she continued, voice like brittle wood. "And you recorded it." Mitch opened his mouth, but she held up a hand, not in anger, in warning. "You brought it with you," he blinked. "I didn't. Not on purpose," she interrupted softly. "That's how it works. It wants someone to look, just one, that's all it needs." The desert stretched away around them, vast and silent. "What is it?" Mitch asked. The woman tilted her head just slightly. "You already know. Your blood does. I'm not Diné. My mother was Mexican. Father was half Hopi. I grew up in Phoenix. I don't have that connection." "You do," she said, not unkindly. "Just not the one you think. The land doesn't forget. Even if the people do." She stood. He stepped back instinctively, but she didn't approach. Just looked out toward the horizon, where the moon had begun to rise, low, orange, distorted. "It wears the shape of what you've buried," she murmured. "That's why it wears the dog." Mitch felt the words lodge in his throat. "My dad's dog. It's never the same shape twice, but always close enough, always enough to make you follow." The woman turned then and began walking away, disappearing into the scrub as quickly as she'd appeared. No footprints, no noise. He stood there alone again, the air colder than it should have been. That night he didn't film anything, didn't post, didn't record. But the next morning there were new comments on his last dashcam upload. Dozens. Why is there something breathing in the background? I watched this with headphones. It's right behind the mic. You cut the video at 3:04:11, but if you scrub the brightness you can still see its reflection in the windshield. Bro, you're not supposed to post these. They're not dead things. They're old things they remember. Your voice sounds different at the end of the clip, like it's trying to copy you. Mitch slammed the laptop shut. He looked at his own reflection in the window just for a moment, and for the first time since this all began, he didn't recognize his own expression. Chapter 7. The voice inside the wind. Mitch drove through 3 towns without remembering the turns. The daylight hours were slippery now. Events flickered in and out like bad signal, like the footage he used to edit when he'd overlay a glitched filter for effect. Only now it wasn't aesthetic, it was happening in his body. At some point he realized his mouth was moving, not humming, not muttering, repeating, "Don't call it, don't call it, don't call it." His voice, over and over, like a skipping cassette tape lodged in his throat. He clamped his jaw shut, but the silence that followed was worse. It rang in his head like pressure on the inside of a diving bell. Not absence, something waiting. A pause in an old tape right before it plays backward. His phone buzzed. A missed call. Then another. From his cousin, Lainey. He hesitated. She was the only family member he still had contact with, and only barely. But his thumb hovered over the voicemail icon and clicked. A second of static. Then her voice, tight with emotion. "Mitch, you didn't tell me you were coming up north. I saw your post. Mitch, don't film that road again. I mean it. You don't know what you're showing people. And your voice, it didn't sound like you." A pause. "Someone came to the door last night. Not someone, something. I thought it was you. It said your name with my voice. Like it was trying to learn how to use it." She hung up. Mitch dropped the phone, his breath caught in his throat. That phrase from a message, it said your name with my voice. It echoed, because he had heard something almost identical the night before, in the wind. At first, he thought it was just auditory hallucination or stress. But now, he started the truck. Something in him wouldn't let him sleep, not here, not anywhere still. The sun was dipping low. He aimed the hood toward Monument Valley, hoping movement would keep him sane. That's when the CB radio clicked on. He didn't even remember flipping it on. It hadn't worked in years. But it hissed softly at first and then louder. A shuffling sound, like footsteps on dry stone, then a breath, then his own voice. "Hey folks, Mitch again, coming at you with another roadside cryptid log. Gonna be rolling past Navajo Route 13 here in a few." He froze. That was audio from a post he never published. A raw file he only recorded months ago. It had been on his hard drive. Private. And we're gonna see if the creature shows up again. Honestly, I hope it does. Because I've been waiting to ask it what it wants. Then it shifted. The voice wobbled. Same tone, same cadence, but something was off. "I want to come closer now," it said, not a sentence he'd recorded. "I want to come inside. I want to be you longer." Mitch punched the radio off, nearly swerved into a wash. Dust whipped around the tires. He felt it then, not fear exactly. Something older, like shame twisted up in ancestral wire. Like being caught watching something he never should have seen. Not guilt from doing something, but from being watched for too long. In the rearview mirror, he saw his own eyes catch the red twilight. For just a second, they didn't reflect. They absorbed the light, like something behind them was deeper than it should be. No gleam, no glint. Just matte black where the pupil should have ended. He turned the mirror up. He didn't want to see what he was becoming. Chapter 8. The room without echoes. The motel was skeletal. Just 5 rooms, all numbered with rusted brass tags and sun-bleached Navajo patterns long worn from the stucco. The parking lot had no lights, no other cars, not even a vending machine hum. Mitch took room 3. He didn't ask. The old man behind the counter didn't speak, just slid over the key and looked away like Mitch had already done something wrong by walking in. The room was cold, not from the air. The vent didn't even work, but the walls seemed to breathe, inward, as if the space wanted to collapse into itself. He tossed his bag in the corner and collapsed on the bed, but sleep didn't come, not really. Instead, he laid there, eyes half-lidded, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked too much like a deer skull with too many antlers. His ears buzzed. Not tinnitus, exactly. More like a signal tone. The kind you'd hear right before a weather alert kicks in on live radio. Then he heard his voice, not recorded, not mechanical, spoken. "I didn't want to take him," it said softly, but he opened the door. Mitch sat up so fast his spine crackled. He wasn't sure if the sound had come from the room or his own throat. He stared at the mirror on the far wall. His reflection didn't move. Mitch blinked, slowly. The man in the mirror didn't. No, no, no. he stood and walked toward it. The closer he got, the more his stomach dropped into a cold, nauseous weight, because it wasn't a reflection. It looked like him, sure. Same shape, same stubble, same faded hoodie with the bleach stain from back when he lived in Phoenix. But it wasn't mirroring, it was watching. A half-second delay in every blink, every twitch. Mitch lifted a hand. The thing in the mirror waited, then copied him imperfectly, like it wasn't used to using a body. Its eyes were matte, too wide, as if it was drinking in every movement. Then its lips moved before his. "You called me," it said. No sound, just the movement of its mouth. But the words bloomed directly into his mind, like a memory he didn't earn. Then it smiled, and Mitch felt its smile in his own face. He stumbled back, hitting the dresser. The mirror cracked, but not from impact, from within. A spidery pattern etched itself outward from the reflection's heart, as though something behind the glass had pressed forward. Then silence, no wind, no highway noise. Mitch grabbed his phone, desperate to record, document something, but the screen was already on. The camera app was open, and it was already recording. The timestamp read, recording 9 minutes 31 seconds. He hadn't touched it. The footage showed his face, but not him. Something sitting on the motel bed, slack-jawed, whispering. The words were too soft to hear, but the eyes were dead black. Not like he looked, like a different species. Then the image spoke, clearer this time. "You were the loudest voice, the one who kept telling stories, calling me by other names. You gave me shape." The footage smiled. "Now I want to tell one too." The phone died. Mitch sat in the dark, trembling, realizing he wasn't alone in his head anymore. And worse, the thing had learned how to use his voice. Chapter 9, where the mirror cracks inward. Mitch didn't sleep. Not really. He thought he had. He remembered dreams. One where the ceiling opened like a pupil dilating, and another where he watched himself pull something awful and slick from his own throat, like a scarf made of wet hair. But when he sat up, gasping, blinking in the darkness of room 3, he realized something that filled him with cold recognition. His shoes weren't where he left them, and the door was unlocked. He was sure, he'd bolted it. The metal chain had been slid in too, but now it hung loose. The carpet smelled faintly of old creek water and burnt sage. There were muddy boot prints. Barefoot too, he looked down. They were his. Each step perfectly matched the size, angle, and arch of his feet. They circled the bed, looped to the mirror, stopped in front of the desk chair. Then returned to the bed. Returned, as if whoever made them had stood above his sleeping body, watching. Or waiting. Mitch sat for a long time on the bed's edge, eyes stinging, thoughts spiraling like smoke sucked into a vent. Something felt reversed, like the narrative had pivoted, as if he were now the apparition trapped in a stranger's story. He turned on the TV, desperate for any white noise, any tether to the normal world. It didn't turn on. The screen glitched once, then filled with a static grey, like a forgotten VHS. But instead of the usual snow, it showed a faint shadow. A man, maybe, standing on a long road in the desert. His silhouette was flickering, like a bad broadcast. Mitch recognized the mountains behind him. It was him, standing on Highway 163 just outside Mexican Hat. Then the man in the static turned to the camera. He didn't blink, didn't move, but something passed behind him, a tall shape, four-legged, not quite a deer, not quite a man. Its limbs bent wrong, knees flexing the wrong direction. It paused, looked at the camera, then slowly began to walk toward it. Mitch reached for the power button. Nothing. The thing kept walking. And then, without a cut, without a fade, the thing appeared inside the motel room on screen. The same wallpaper, the same mirror, same bed. It was recording from inside room 3, except Mitch wasn't in the bed anymore. The bed was empty. The camera slowly rotated to face the mirror. And there he was, inside the mirror, looking back at himself, not moving, just smiling, not out of joy, but the cold, sterile satisfaction of something that has finally taken root in a warm body. Then the screen went black, and Mitch heard it again, his own voice whispering, "I'm almost done being you." He spun around, heart thundering. No one was there, but his phone vibrated on the nightstand. It had recorded a voice memo. Timestamp, 3:33 a.m. file name. Retelling MP3, he played it with shaking hands. Nothing, just ambient motel room noise. And then, his own voice. The thing doesn't wear you all at once. It uses your face to learn the words. Then it mimics your thoughts. Then it forgets it was ever pretending. Mitch dropped the phone. For the first time in his life, he felt the visceral terror of not knowing if he was alone in his own skull. He grabbed his backpack and fled the room barefoot, sprinting out across the empty parking lot beneath a moon that looked wrong. It had a second shape behind it, like an out-of-focus silhouette trying to crawl through. He didn't stop until he was back on the road, dust kicking up behind him. Only then did he realize he wasn't heading anywhere. He was just running away. And maybe that's what the thing wanted all along, to wear him in motion. Chapter 10, the place that remembers you wrong. The sun rose behind Mitch, but it felt like it came up too fast. Like someone had skipped ahead in a slideshow, not bothering to explain what came between. He didn't remember falling asleep on the roadside, but he woke on the embankment beneath a thin juniper tree, mouth full of dust, sun crawling hot across his arms. His boots were on his feet again, laced perfectly. He didn't remember putting them on. His pack, which he'd left behind at the motel, was propped against the tree beside him. A small tin of trail mix sat neatly on top, and next to it, propped upright, was a photograph. It showed him, standing beside a dark-haired woman on the shoulder of a road. He had his arm around her. They were smiling. There was no one in the world that smile could have been for. Mitch had never seen that photo before in his life, but the memory started to slide in anyway. A false recollection, but it came with smell, sound, and warmth. The woman's name was on the tip of his tongue, Lee, and he remembered her laugh, remembered holding her in a thunderstorm, remembered the night she told him not to take this job, how her eyes had gone flat and distant when he did, the way she whispered, "They'll send you down the road that forgets to end." Mitch shook his head, clutching it like it hurt to keep his skull stitched closed. The memory felt implanted, fresh, still cooling, like wet ink drying in a rewritten book. He stood, legs shaking, picked up the photo, flipped it over. On the back was scrawled, "Remember who you were before you looked back." Below it, etched faintly in graphite, was a sketch of the motel, room 3, and beneath that, "You're already inside." He walked, for hours, unsure of where he was or where he had been. At some point the road forked, but both directions were labeled the same, to Monument Valley. He chose the left path mostly by instinct. The further he walked, the less real the surroundings became. The rocks bled together like watercolor. Sky turned the wrong color, too pink like cured flesh. The wind spoke in tones, not whistles, almost words. It said things like, "Not yours," borrowed thoughts. The skin remembers who it used to be. At dusk, he reached a small visitor pull-off, a scenic overlook built beside a slope of burnt orange rock. There was a wooden bench, informational plaque, and an old coin-operated binocular viewer pointing westward. He sat, hands trembling, trying to catch his breath, trying not to cry. Then, compulsively, he stood and looked through the viewer. What he saw on the other side made him collapse. It wasn't the desert. It was the motel room, room 3. He could see inside it, every detail exact. The bed, the cracked mirror, the desk chair. And in the chair sat himself, scribbling something into a notebook. But the figure had no reflection in the mirror, no shadow on the floor. It was wrong. He saw the way it held its arms too stiff, like it didn't know how much a body was supposed to weigh. It moved with the careful precision of a creature pretending to be tired. Then it looked up, right at him, through the binoculars. Mitch flinched back, pulled away from the viewer. But behind his eyes, he could still see the thing's face. His face, but loosened, like a mask soaking off in warm water. He heard something crunch beside him, bootsteps. Someone was walking up the overlook trail. Mitch turned slowly, but there was no one. Just a shadow that shouldn't be there, cast by no source, stretching out across the rock from a figure not visible to the naked eye. Then, very faintly, he felt breath on his ear. It said, gently, "We're almost even now. One more thing to remember, and you're me." Mitch ran. Chapter 11. The hills don't blink. The storm never really passed, just shifted, hung back. The clouds above were pale and sour, bruising the horizon with the light of a sun that couldn't quite penetrate. Hank's windshield was flecked with pollen and ash. That smell of scorched sage and hot iron followed him into the cab. He hadn't lit anything. He drove east, past Shiprock and deeper into the mesas, through gullies where the scrubland gave way to sparse pine and bare red stone. His phone hadn't buzzed in hours, not even static, not a single comment, not a single watcher left. He was off course now, following a ghost trail between towns, roads not marked on the paper maps. But the GPS on his cracked tablet showed a blinking arrow still crawling forward, still insisting he was somewhere. Every rise he passed, every hilltop and shoulder above the road, he watched for the figure. And every time he was sure he'd missed it, a voice whispered low across the CB radio. "Hank!" He didn't respond anymore, not to that voice. Not when it sounded like his father. Not when it called to him like a child lost. Not when it begged with the desperation of a man trapped underground. In the distance, now, no longer just behind him, he saw the thing that watches the road. It stood upwind this time, crouched on a rocky ledge like a hyena with its legs too long. Its silhouette was sharp against the stormlight, ears pricked forward, shoulders hunched, and that awful, wrong face. Not a mask, never a mask. It wasn't smiling, it was learning. Every time he slowed, it moved, not with footsteps, not like a creature that walked. It just appeared again closer at the next hill, watching. Hank began to see more of them, not figures, not whole shapes, just eyes. Sets of them, far too high above the road, blinking out from the bark of old pinyon trees, from beneath broken slabs of roadside rock. Some narrow, human, some too wide, too round. Some with no light at all behind them but a kind of hunger. He spoke aloud to himself, to the cab, to the road. "You don't get to have me. I see you now. I know what you are." No response came. He passed an abandoned rest stop, shattered vending machines, graffiti eaten by wind. And in the cracked glass of the old men's room mirror, he saw someone else's face blink back. Not warped, not twisted. His own face, but it smiled when he didn't. He floored the gas. The transmission shrieked. The engine rattled with a sound like dry bones spinning in a tin drum, and the rig flew forward. But when the wheels passed the shadow of the next hill, his headlights blinked, and something stood in the road, not blocking it, not crossing, just standing in the painted centerline like it belonged there, like it always had. It turned, dog-faced, but not a dog, and as it turned, it raised its hand. Hank's body locked. The brakes didn't work. The wheels spun, but the tires didn't follow. Something deep in his brain, a primal switch, told him to open the door, to step out, to walk toward it. A voice called out from behind his ear. "Leave the truck. Come and see what you are." He resisted. Somehow, he veered off the road. Metal screamed against stone. Rubber exploded on gravel. The truck jackknifed into a ditch, and the world turned end over end in slow, shattered chaos. When he came to, the world was quiet again, but the road was gone. There was only desert, and the thing was nowhere to be seen. But his phone screen flickered to life, and his live stream had resumed. Only now he wasn't the one on camera. Chapter 12. We speak the roads into being. There was blood on the cracked phone screen. Hank wasn't sure if it was his. His left arm dangled wrong, but he couldn't feel much of it past the shoulder. The desert floor dug into his back, dry and whispering, like something beneath the dust exhaled when he moved. His rig lay on its side 20 feet away, wheels still spinning in slow defiance of gravity. The windshield was gone. Steam hissed from the bent hood like breath from a nostril. No fire, just smoke. Smoke and that smell. Burnt hair. Wet copper, the reek of teeth that had never known gums. He sat up. Vision doubled. Sound came in waves. Something hissed not far off, not a snake. The stream was still live. He picked up the phone, fingers trembling. The app pulsed. 12,004 watching. No chat, no likes, no hearts or angry faces, just watchers, silent, still. The screen flicked to static, then cleared. It wasn't his face on the screen. It looked like him, yes, but cleaner, healthier, calm. It sat cross-legged in the middle of the road, hands in its lap, speaking directly into the lens. "I'm Hank Yazzie. I came here to document the old legends, to show you the forgotten corners of the world. But I found more than I bargained for." It smiled. A perfect, polite smile. one Hank had never used in his life. The thing spoke with his voice, but not his cadence, not his fear, not the grief. There are creatures older than borders, older than languages. Out here, they wear your face when you forget who you are. They wait on the roads until someone opens their mouth and invites them in, until someone speaks the old name. Hank felt something watching him from behind, not close, not far, a wide presence, like the horizon had bent forward to listen. The voice on the screen continued, "And I did. I said it. I didn't mean to, but I said it. And once you say its name, it blinked, it hears you back." The phone slipped from his hand. Sand had worked its way under his eyelids. He didn't remember crawling. His legs weren't moving like they should. His own voice, his real voice, was hoarse, swallowed by the wind. "Who are you?" No answer. Not from the stream, not from the hills. But the thing on the screen turned slowly and looked directly out at him, through the glass, through the lens, and it said, "You asked the wind to tell the story, and the wind never forgets." The shadows changed then. The wind rose, not with violence but with certainty, as if the land had remembered its shape after centuries of forgetting. As if time peeled back its skin, and underneath it there was no GPS, no asphalt, no network tower, just a tongue of red stone whispering its secrets to something beneath it. All around him the desert began to speak, not in words, in mirroring, a face in the stone, a figure in the dust, a howl that was his own voice thrown back at him. Hank crawled, clawed, sobbed, not out of pain, but of loss. Not grief for a person, but for a place inside himself that had finally gone still. He'd been watching the road for years, but now the road watched back. Epilogue: they found the truck 3 days later. Abandoned, no sign of struggle. Blood in the cab, but none of it matched any known DNA. The phone was gone. The final stream ended on a perfect still shot, sunrise over the Badlands, no figure in sight. Just the wind, high and howling, whispering something in a tongue no one could quite identify. The audio analysis glitched. The video refused to delete. Every now and then, someone reuploads it. And every time it does, someone claims the same thing. They saw the man watching them this time. Not in the video, but in the reflection of their screen. You made it back for now. But the things in the dark never truly leave, do they? They watch. They wait, and perhaps they remember you now too. If you want to hear more, if you dare to listen again, step back into the shadows. Like the video. Subscribe, but know this: some doors once opened do not close so easily.